Starting out the video with post commentary. Yeah, not the entire thing is going to be like this, so don't worry about it. This is a bit that I had to record before 10 a.m. because of morning exclusives. So this was actually several days before the rest of the video, and I'm recording the commentary about a week after because timing. Basically right here I'm just doing some PC management because I was looking through the stuff I caught and happened to notice that this Slowpoke is actually holding a King's Rock, which is fairly rare and somewhat useful, because not only is it just a decent held item to have that I'll probably want to give to one of my team members, but it's used for a couple trade evolutions, so that's one less I have to worry about finding later on, I guess. I don't actually know if you get 2 King's Rocks in the game normally without having to get them off of held Pokemon, so it's... if you do, then hey, this is a spare and I'm fine with that. But anyway, I think I was, like, thinking that my Bellsprout had Flash, which it didn't. I brought it with me mainly for that reason, because I'm going to be heading into Dark Cave a little bit later on. So, yeah, it's just with me for no real reason. But, I've said a few times that there's several Pokemon that... Where the hell am I going? I haven't actually... I guess getting Pokeballs. I, like, haven't looked at this footage in a couple days. But yeah, there's a few things that only show up in the morning. Luckily, not very many. I believe morning in this game is 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. And honestly, given my usual schedule, I'd probably be more likely to be up at 4 a.m. than to get up before 10, but this day I happened to get up at, like, shortly after 9, and I'm like, screw it, we'll just go ahead and try and catch these few Pokemon that I need. And, luckily enough for me, one of them is fairly common. The other two, not so much. I'll be talking more about those in a minute. But, I believe we're about to run into it pretty soon here. Even if it's not the first encounter, I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the footage and do the bio over that, because it's easier that way. So, ending this post-commentary, starting a different one. Ledyba is another early game bug type, is the version-exclusive counterpart to Spinarak. Spinarak only being available in gold and at nighttime. This one is only available in silver and in the morning. And, it's definitely more inconvenient to get than Spinarak because most people are probably not going to be playing in the early morning hours, but sadly they're not going to be really missing out on much because Ledyba is kind of crap. There's a few different classifications of bug, like early game bug types. There's the ones like Caterpie and Weedle that exist for no reason other than to be evolved. They were never meant to be usable really in any sense. There's ones that are actually good, which took a while to really show up at all, but you could say that's the case for like Suwaddle and Gen 5 and a few other things. And then there's ones like this, which are not specifically designed to be useless, but they pretty much are anyway. And part of the reason for that is just the fact that it has extremely low stats, pretty much across the board except for special defense. And it doesn't really learn any moves that are noteworthy in any way. Looking over its learn set in Gen 2, it seems to be kind of playing the Chikorita route of things where it just learns a bunch of support stuff. It gets Light Screen, Reflect, Safeguard, and then Baton Pass, which is not entirely needed because none of those things really need to be Baton Passed. It does learn Agility, which you can pass, but not until level 43. And, it doesn't learn any stab moves for Bug or Flying, so it's pretty much just stuck with, Comet Punch and Swift and things like that, which are not going to be doing a whole lot of damage. And, truth be told, the evolution's not a whole lot better, but we'll be getting to that later on. As for the design, it's pretty straightforward as far as bug Pokemon go. There's some that have a bit more obscure origins. This one's pretty much just a Ladybug. To talk about those very briefly, just due to a lack of anything better to say, I don't really understand why they have different names depending on where you live, but they're Ladybugs in the US, but they're Ladybirds in England. And apparently in most other English-speaking countries, they're ladybirds, despite not being birds at all. They're obviously bugs. But apparently the scientific community prefers them to be called ladybird beetles specifically because bug is a term that refers to a specific kind of insect with like certain mouth parts that a ladybug doesn't have, so it's like technically incorrect to call it a bug, but whatever. Most people just call them bugs anyway. I don't know. Ladybugs are just kind of weird in the sense that they're basically just a beetle that is for some reason more or less accepted by society as not being gross, and very few other insects get that pass, other than like butterflies and maybe dragonflies. If they were colored differently, people probably would not like them. They're basically just small beetles, but they happen to be brightly colored, and so they appeal to children for whatever reason. And I can't say that I'm, like, immune to this. Like, I don't mind them either, whereas other small beetles I don't necessarily want near me, but I don't know, it's just a cultural thing. That's it. It's Ladybug. It's not particularly exciting. The name is just Ladybug, but spelled weirdly and shortened. And the beta name for it, by which I mean, like, stuff I've seen in early promotional material, is pretty much just the same name, but with, like, a hyphen in between. This one did show up in like, the Pikachu short before the second movie, so it did get a little bit of exposure back then, and then pretty much fell into obscurity after that. And the Japanese name is just Ledyba, same thing, but with an R at the beginning, which I find weird because, Japan does kind of have that thing where they have the same sound for R and L, but some of their, like, translated Pokemon names start with an R and some start with an L, so it really could go either way, and I'm not sure why they went for the R on this one. Bulbapedia suggests it might be because it's red, but I don't know. Alright, so here back at Route 46, we're looking for one of the rare ones. It's a 5% encounter rate, only in the morning. Originally here in Gold and Silver you could find Jigglypuff, and they moved it in Crystal. I'm not really entirely sure why. Because Jigglypuff wasn't a morning exclusive in those games, so it's not like it was even a straight, like, replacement. They just kind of changed the encounter table here. But, something I did not realize originally going into this was the fact that the Pokemon in question actually has the ability to flee from battle. There's just a random assortment of things that can do that in Gen 2, and it's weird because apparently there's a pretty likely chance of this happening with a lot of them. In this case, it's a 50% chance on every single turn, and yet I somehow don't remember this ever happening in any of my playthroughs of a Gen 2 game, basically ever. So, I just kind of happened to see somebody mention this on Discord, and was like, oh, crap, that's actually going to be a problem. And I looked over my team and realized that since I have Bind on David, I can use that to prevent it from running, so that was kind of just lucky on my part. If I didn't have that, then this would have gone a lot more poorly. But anyway, here we go. Here we have Phanpy, and oh boy is this one forgettable, which is kind of a shame because it is a cute design, but this is definitely a Pokemon that is more remembered for its evolution than its first stage, and even then the evolution is not really all that memorable either, other than it appearing early on as far as Gen 2 Pokemon go, but that's another discussion. Phanpy is pretty much just a Puffkin, as far as I'm concerned. If you don't know what a Puffkin is, then don't worry about it, but if you do, then you might have gotten a chuckle out of that. It's pretty straightforward baby elephant. I mean, there's not really anything spectacular about it other than it's blue and has orange bits on it for some reason. It doesn't really do anything all that outstanding, and it's a member of the elite group of Pokemon that basically don't ever learn any moves of their type. You can teach it stuff with TMs, but it's not going to learn any ground-type moves through level up. Even as far, like, even in Gen 7, they've still never rectified this. Usually, Pokemon that have really bad move pools in early games have that sort of fixed later on. Stuff like Sandshrew and Voltorb would eventually start getting moves of their type. Phanpy didn't. Pretty much the only thing that it gets that is noteworthy in any way is Rollout. But I mean, it's not going to get stabbed from it, and it's not even the only Pokemon from Gen 2 known for using Rollout, because we also have Miltank. So, combine that with the fact that you don't find it until really late in the game, and it's a version exclusive, not counting the, like, early crystal thing you can do here, which is extremely obscure. And most people probably did not use one of these. Which, again, it's a shame, because I don't hate the design by any means. It's simple, but it does what it needs to do. It's just, there's better choices. I can't think of a single game where you can find this thing early on, actually. And, like, again, other than Crystal, and I barely count that because no one's gonna know that it's there. But, yeah, it's, like, I had 5 minutes for Ledyba. This one I can barely fit 3, and I'm not gonna force it. It's just, best thing I can say about this one is I had ideas for starters at one point, and the water starter was shockingly similar to Phanpy, because it was just an elephant that was a water type, and it, like, stored water in its ears, which were shaped like canteens. And the fact that Phanpy existed made me feel like my idea was a ripoff, so it loses points for that at least. As for the name, it's just takes the last syllable of elephant, but changes it slightly. The P part doesn't really have any reason to be there. And the Japanese name is Gomazo. Apparently, Goma comes from Tosaigoma, which means yearling, or a year-old animal, and the zo is just elephant. So, I mean, it's pretty literal. That's this one. Let's move on. As a brief aside here, I'd like to point out that after catching the Phanpy, it was 9:50 a.m., and I only had 10 minutes left to find the next one, and given that Phanpy took freaking forever to show up, I was not very well convinced that I was going to find the other one, but I did. I got lucky, so here we go. Teddiursa is a bit of a rare case of being a normal type that is not an early game rodent, but also isn't just a single stager. There's surprisingly few of these, at least in the first few generations. They start kind of becoming a little bit more common later on with things like Minccino and the Whismur family. But the closest thing I can compare this to is probably Meowth in terms of, like, the early game, or the early generation ones. But it's different from Meowth in the sense that it's not available until, like, the end of the game, except for in Crystal, where they made it available early on, but made it so rare and obscure that nobody would ever find it. I consider myself pretty knowledgeable in Pokemon locations, and even I didn't know that this thing was here until relatively recently. I knew about Phanpy being in the other route, but not so much this one. But yeah, if you look through the list of games that Teddiursa and its evolution have been available in, which is already pretty limited, actually, they don't show up very often. It's usually really late in the game, or specifically post-game, and there's really not much of a reason for that, other than them just forgetting to put it in the regional Pokedex most of the time. The only time that I ever considered using one was in XD, where it's actually the first Shadow Pokemon that you catch, and I figured because it was obscure enough I'd give it a shot, and it worked out fairly well. Being a normal type, its main claim to fame is just kind of sort of being able to learn a lot of different types of TMs, but not so much the elemental ones in this case, because it's more physical based than something like Jigglypuff or Clefairy. So once it evolves, you can teach it some fighting moves, ground moves, stuff like that. So it's not going to be outstanding, but it holds its own. One of the weird things about Teddiursa is that it actually traded version exclusivity with Phanpy in the original versions. Originally, this one was in the Japanese versions, you could find it in silver, but then for all the international versions after that, they made it in gold. And then they kept the original setup for Heart Gold and Soul Silver in all copies of the game. And I don't really know why they ever changed it in the first place. It's the only time they've ever done something like that, other than, like, events not being available. This was, like, the first time they actually changed the encounter tables. And it also has the distinction of being the only non-Gen 1 Pokemon to get its own unique sprite in Fire Red and Leaf Green, other than the Deoxys forms. And the reason they did that was probably because of the jump rope minigame that it could take part in, because its normal sprite had it sitting down, and apparently somebody looked at that extremely minor side game and decided that was worth changing it for. I don't know. Anyway, it's a bear. You can look at it and try to determine what this thing is, and guess what? It's a bear. It's just teddy bear. It kind of looks like a sun bear, apparently. Its evolution does more than this one, but it's a bear. Its name is just Teddy and Ursa, which means bear. It's pretty straightforward. Japanese name is Himeguma. Hime meaning small, and guess what? Guma means bear. So, this one's pretty literal. Not as literal as the extremely crappy picture in the original Beckett magazines, in which it didn't even have the moon on its head, and it was just literally a brown teddy bear. But, yeah, it's cute, but it's a bear. This is probably going to be a really weird segment. You'll find out why eventually. So, as you saw there for about 5 seconds, it is daytime, despite what the forest will tell you. And so, the new Pokemon that I said would be available in the forest that I wanted to catch are not available right now. The reason I'm playing this during the day is because this is basically the only time that I can actually do this. The last few days at work have been a complete shit show, and I thought I was going to be getting a couple days off. Nope. I get one off on Wednesday. I get one off on Wednesday. I do not get any more days off until at least next Tuesday, and I don't know if I get that day off. It's because they don't do the schedule more than a week in advance, so that's as far as I can say. And I'm not pleased about this, but I suppose there's not too much I can do about it. I'm going to ignore Joel's really weird alarm going off in the background. I never really understood why that thing is as obnoxious as it is. Don't know if you can hear it, but anyway, this is Fearful. He's everybody's favorite Farfetch'd. If you don't know why I'm calling it that, it's just yet another Vietnamese crystal reference. Just whenever you talk to the thing, it goes, Fearful, and then runs off. And I found that rather funny. But yeah, since I'm not going to be catching anything new in this forest, and it's going to take me at least a couple minutes to get through this, I feel like I can at least try to summarize what the hell has been happening at work, because I feel like this needs to be shared, because it's incredibly shitty. So, it was mostly on Friday. Friday was the worst day, although the days afterwards were not a whole lot better. They were bad for their own reasons, and I love this encounter rate, by the way. So, I actually wrote an email to Ashley, our old manager, and this thing is like 10 paragraphs long, so it's like I'm trying to see if I can refresh my memory and read through this while I'm playing the game. So let's see, I got in about 5:30, and Darius was already there. I talked about him in the last video, he's the other cook. He'd been there since about 1, and he was supposed to leave, like, about 9 o'clock maybe, but knowing how things go, I figured he was probably going to end up having to stay longer. So, the day started out fairly normal for a bit. We had dough prepared, we had stuff that we needed, whatever. And then, just basically out of nowhere, for reasons that I do not understand, the orders just shot up from being like 1 or 2 on screen at a time, and we'd finish it, and a new one would come in, like, just kind of steady work, to, like, suddenly there's 10 orders, and then they keep coming. And so we're trying to just kind of keep up with these things, and it's not really possible. Do I have my Paris with me? Okay, now I need to get Paris for TM use, or HM usage. But, yeah, it's not really possible to keep up, so we have to switch to only doing the ones for carryouts, because there are going to be people coming to the store to pick it up. They're going to want it ready. Deliveries can kind of wait a little bit longer, because they're usually on a bit of a delay anyway, since we have to wait for the drivers to take them out. So that's what we usually do when it gets really backed up. So we start doing that, but then it gets to a point where it never really gets any better. And it's like, okay, we've got these carryouts we've got to do, but these deliveries have been waiting over a half an hour. We should probably start doing these. And so it's trying to juggle both of them. And while this is going on, the people over on the what we call the cut table, basically cutting up the pizzas, boxing them, etc., they are losing half of the orders that we're making because there's so many coming out all at once. They're basically just putting them in a very disorganized fashion and losing track of what's what. And I think I can get a charcoal from here, let me check. And so, like, half the pizzas we're making, we're having to remake because they fucking lose them. And it's really annoying because we have enough shit to do as it is. So, let me see. I'm trying to read what I have going on here. So yeah, I've mentioned before on multiple occasions, I don't know what video specifically, but I talk about this a lot, just how the management has been really shitty lately because the good people left. So we used to have these 2 people named Travis and Russell, who I was not very fond of, but they at least occasionally got stuff done. We now have... Oh, it would be useful if I taught the HM. We now have... What are their names? Paula and Derek. Paula is the new regional manager, meaning she's the one who's, like, supposed to be basically in charge of everything and tell everybody else, like, tell the other managers what they need to focus on and stuff. She has never worked at Pizza Hut before, and apparently was a manager at KFC, and thinks that that knowledge will just work perfectly fine. And so Ashley, like, specifically didn't want her to be hired. But they're like, oh, well, your last manager had really bad numbers on, like, how, like, on customer reviews and orders coming out on time, so we're gonna have to replace them. And she's like, okay, but can we not replace them with somebody who doesn't know what they're doing? Oh, it'll be fine. So they bring in this new person. I don't think I've seen her do anything. Other than, like, maybe cut some pizzas and kind of waddle around and bitch at people for not doing what they're supposed to, even though she won't do it. So, like, she keeps coming over, I need a remake on that, gives me this receipt. I'm like, can someone else come do it? Do you see the 15 fucking orders I'm trying to make here? Well, we need this one now. And so, that's constantly going on. Derek, I've not really seen do anything either. Actually, even to a less degree. On a couple occasions, he would come by and be like, hey, you need any refills here? I'm like, yeah, we need Italian sausage, we need pineapple, we need this. And then he'd, like, go off and then get the wrong stuff. And he would just kind of plop it down on the table. He wouldn't open the bags. The ones that are, like jalapenos and some stuff are, like, in juice, and you have to drain those. He wouldn't do that. He would just... I'm like, thanks. Okay. So that was just going on for forever. There's a person there named Angel who's been there a while, and she is usually one of the fastest people at cutting up the pizzas. By the way, to actually talk about the game for a second here, this is where you get your Headbutt TM and number of Pokemon you can get from shaking trees, but I'm not going to be worrying about that today. We'll come back to that at some point. Headbutt's also a pretty decent move. You can buy more of these at the department store, but I'm going to hold off on teaching this one to anything at the moment. Like, it would be an improvement over Tackle, and if I had the money for it, I would probably just teach it to everything, but funds have been a bit of an issue just because of all the Pokeballs I have to buy. So anyway, like I said, she's fast at cutting the pizzas, but for some reason they move her over to help us cook, even though she doesn't really know how to. And she tries to argue this point, and they're like, no, we need help over there. It's like, okay. And so, this is where, apparently Joel had ordered a pizza, and he comes in, and he said that the number of people in the front of the store was basically along the lines of, like, what did he say? He said it was like a bank on the morning of the Great Depression, that the entire store was just packed with, like, people like a sardine can, and it was taking, like, 30 to 45 minutes for people to get their order because they were losing all the fucking pizzas. So people were pissed off. And apparently the computers were down. So apparently, They had, like, this other person from a different store come in. I don't know who she was. She was just this blonde bitch that I really hated. And she didn't do anything either other than yell at people really loudly and annoyingly. And tell me to make, like, 10 remakes. So, at one point she's on the phone with, like, the help desk trying to get the problem sorted out. And looks over at our screen and sees that there's, like, 15 pizzas on there. And she's like, okay, these are all gonna have to be wiped. And then just instantly, we lose all the orders. And the screen has, like, a function that pulls back stuff that you've already cleared, but because, like, it was wiped entirely and there was no memory, like, we had no way of finding what any of those orders were. And so, and the pizza's coming out of the oven, like, on their end, they didn't have a screen either, so they didn't know what these went to, they didn't have any receipts. This story continues, but it's fucking bad. Like, I could keep going, but I'm gonna be getting to a point where I can, like, actually do stuff now. The forest was just kind of, I figured I would talk over that because there wasn't a whole lot going on. So here's Route 34, and this is going to be an important route for us. Let me, before I even fight any trainers, there should be some new Pokemon here, so I can, put in some, bio stuff here once I find one. I'm trying to think if I had to, like, super quickly summarize what else was going on. I could talk about this for fucking hours, that's the problem, and I don't want to make the entire video bitching about Pizza Hut. Oh, well, here's a Ditto. Oh god, Ditto's actually kind of rare. Okay, it should copy the catch rate of whatever I send in. So, of the things I have with me, I think Paris is the best chance. Oh, good. But yeah, like I said, there's a couple things on this route. I don't know how many of them I'll be encountering, but let me go ahead and make use of my time here, so we're just going to go ahead and talk about Ditto for a bit. I almost have too much to say about Ditto because it has a lot of weird things involved with it, so I'm just going to kind of speed through these and probably not get to all of them. The origin of this one is probably based off of an amoeba or the concept of stem cells. They've also gone on record saying that the face is pretty much just meant to be like the classic emoticon, like blank smiley face, just because it's universally recognizable. Name is pretty straightforward, it's just like that which has been said before, and the Japanese name Metamon is just metamorphosis and monster. But yeah, this one, definitely one of the more unusual normal types, and one of the first Pokemon to really be a normal type because of a lack of anything better to give it, rather than because it's normal in the sense that it's not noteworthy and has no elemental affiliation with it. Pretty much everybody knows about this one. Its only, like, capability is that it can transform. It doesn't have any other attacks of its own. In Gen 1, that was fairly useless because it was pretty much just an inferior version of whatever you were fighting. Gen 2 onwards, it's been mostly used for breeding because it can breed with almost any Pokemon that isn't like a legendary or baby. So, I mean, it definitely has its role for that. It is slightly more useful at Gen 5 onwards due to its hidden ability Imposter, allowing it to transform as soon as it comes into battle instead of having to waste a turn. So it's basically just whatever you're fighting, but with 5 PP on every move and lower HP, which is still worse, but it is not as bad as having to waste your first turn and get attacked. Ditto also has a couple, like, specific held items. One of them boosts speed, the other one boosts, I think, defense. I didn't even bother looking it up. Nobody ever uses those items. They're pretty situational. One of the more interesting, like, theories behind Ditto is that it's some kind of, like, leftover genetic material from trying to create Mewtwo, because both Ditto and Mew are the same height, same weight, they're both pink, they both have a blue shiny, and they're both affiliated with Cinnabar Mansion in some way, and the Cerulean Cave for that matter. It's not 100% foolproof in terms of theories. There are a few gaps in it, but it works out strangely well. Unfortunately, Game Freak has gone on record with sort of like a non-answer when they were told about this. They were just like, oh, every Pokemon is its own unique thing, ha ha ha. They didn't really give a reason why it wasn't related, other than maybe they just didn't think about it, but I feel like somebody probably had that idea, because it's too close to be a coincidence otherwise. And one of the other sort of like interesting, almost pop culture-y things about Ditto is the concept of it transforming and keeping the little dopey face that it has. Because I think canonically it's not really supposed to do that, but its first appearance in the anime and its appearance in Pokemon Snap had it do that. And it's an interesting little gimmick that I think kind of gives it some personality. And I like the idea of it not being perfect at transforming and keeping the face. And I kind of wish that the games would do that, but it would be harder to remodel everything to have the Ditto face, so I can understand why they didn't. But yeah, I needed to try and cram this into 4 minutes, so that's about it. Alright, I believe the timing on that worked out fairly well, assuming that ran for 4 minutes. So, are there any other trainers here? Yes, there are. I'm going to attempt to avoid these because, like I said, this video is going to be kind of a shit show, and, yeah, I don't think the cop fights you until nighttime. So here we've got the daycare, and you probably know what's coming if you have played Crystal or if you know anything about this, so let me explain for anybody who doesn't know or just needs to, or wants to know the details. The daycare was in Gen 1, and it existed just for raising your Pokemon's level, but it didn't do anything else. In Gen 2, they introduced the concept of breeding, and we're not going to be getting into that here, it doesn't really need to be talked about. But in Crystal, they did something a little bit different. In the Japanese version specifically, there was this, basically this, it's the equivalent to what we have as like Wi-Fi events now, where if you bought this thing called like I think it was called like the GB mobile adapter or something, you could hook up the Game Boy Color to a mobile phone, and using its service basically download like this ticket that you would pick up in the Goldenrod City Pokemon Center, which was basically upgraded in the Japanese version to be like the service center or something. And with that, you could then buy something called the Odd Egg, which could hatch into 7 different Pokemon, and every one of those had a 50% chance of being shiny. In all the other versions but the Japanese version, since we didn't get the mobile adapter thing, they changed it so you just get the Odd Egg here straight up, but they also made it so you're not as likely to get a shiny. It is now a 1 out of 8 chance instead of a 1 out of 2. So, if you're aiming for one specific shiny Pokemon, that's a 1 out of 8 for it being shiny and a 1 out of 7 of it being the Pokemon you want. I am aiming for a shiny of 1 of 3. So I have a 3 out of 56 chance of getting what I want here. And basically the rest of my team is going to be built around what I get here, because I have, like, backup plans depending on what I get. And now, a problem with this, and actually before I even talk to this guy, I should probably get the bike, because this is going to speed things up considerably. Basically, I have to save, get this egg, because the contents are randomized when you pick it up. Once you have it, if you save, it's always going to be the same thing. And then I have to bike around enough for it to hatch, hope that I get lucky, and if I don't, then reset. And do that probably quite a few times until I happen to get what I want. So, fun. Now, I will also mention, I'm, like, terrified to do this. There is a way that I can speed up the process a bit, because as we learned in the first segment of this game, you can... Yes? I swear, if this is about Quillfish... Okay, no, I'm gonna pass on that. That's too far away. What was I saying? Yeah, you can basically, like, cause the game to kind of mess up its saves a little bit. And so, if I save before picking up the egg and then do, like, the PC duplication trick, I can have the egg that I picked up and still pick up a new one, and then, like, hatch 5 at a time. The problem is, if I save, and if I do the trick too late, like, if I turn the game off after it saves properly, then I won't be able to get any more eggs. So, it's a little bit worrisome. I'm probably going to end up doing it anyway, but let me do, like, one hatching legit. Wait, do I even have space for this in my team? I don't think I do, because I caught the Ditto. Yeah, I gotta put the Ditto away. Okay, I guess I'm gonna be saving again. But yeah, the things that the egg can hatch into are basically all the baby Pokemon, except for Togepi, because Togepi is, like, it's technically a baby, but it kind of isn't at the same time, because it's not, like, a pre-evolution of something from Gen 1. So you can get Pichu, Cleffa, Igglybuff, Tyrogue, Smoochum, Elekid, or Magby. All of them will have Dizzy Punch for some reason. I don't know why that move, but it's just a special move that they'll get, and they have the chance of being shiny. So, we're gonna try this. And, since I'm gonna be, talking over this first hatching, we've probably got a few days before this thing will be ready, so I can continue the, bitching about Pizza Hut, I guess. Let me make sure I'm out of the range of these trainers before I do it. I don't want to accidentally walk into their line of sight while I'm biking. And also, this controller is less than precise. I don't know why, I've just been having trouble walking into walls in this playthrough. I'm surprised nobody's called me out on it yet. Will he see me from over here? Shit. Nope. Turns out that was the shiny. Oh well, we wouldn't know. But yeah, so I don't want to pass by that, apparently. That's annoying. But yeah, to continue the story, like I said, they wiped out all the orders, and we just didn't really know what the hell we were doing for a while. I kept asking, like, we have, like, 12 pizzas that we didn't make, and I don't know what numbers they were, because we were jumping back and forth between the older ones and the newer ones because of the deliveries. Abra, I don't have time to catch you. I'm gonna have to get you later. And eventually they came up with, like, a bunch of receipts, and they're like, did you make this one? Did you make this one? I'm like, I don't fucking remember. I made too many orders today. Like, I'm not gonna remember every pizza. I'll just make them, whatever. So I, like, go in order. I make the pizza on the receipt. I put the receipt over on the table. I keep them in order. Somehow, they still lose some of these. There's not even that many. There's, like, somewhere between 8 and 10. And, like, in the middle of doing these, more orders are popping up on screen. So I guess that's kind of throwing off the order a little bit. And they still had me do remakes for older ones, so that's throwing it off. So it's like, it's... what the fuck is going on in this store? And there was a point where I put a receipt on the table, and then somebody picks it up and looks at it and like, oh, there's this pizza, I don't know where this one is. I'm like, if you ask me to remake this one, I swear to God, I just put it in. You know, when I finish a pizza, it's not done. It goes in the oven and it cooks for 8 minutes. It's not going to be ready yet. Like, what the hell? So, this goes on for a little bit, and then they apparently stopped taking all orders from the front, like whether in person or over the phone, because the system was completely down. And then apparently they the website stopped taking orders, so we just actually had no orders at all as of like 9 o'clock. And so it was just the rest of the night I just got to basically clean up and like not have to worry about shit. I still had to do remakes for like 2-hour-old deliveries that they couldn't find or had gone cold and needed to be redone, so that was fun. But yeah, other than that, it was just the rest of the night was stupid. They had Darius stay on to like do the prep for the next day and all that. So that was Friday, more or less. I'm sure I'm forgetting some details of it, but that's the gist of it. Then Saturday, which, reminder, Saturday, aka one of the busiest days of the week, I was the only cook that day, so that was good. They had one other person that was supposed to be helping me, but she never really knows what to do, and is extremely slow while helping. Oh boy, here we go. I'm gonna like having this message pop up every time I do this. But, so yeah, they have, like, she would do, like, 5 minutes of helping, and then wander off, and I had to keep, like, asking to have her come back. I'm like, I have too many orders to be doing this on my own. Like, I need all the help I can get. If she can't do it, can somebody else? And they're like, no, nobody else can do it. So I had this very slow, unwilling person helping me, and at one point she wanders off, I get her back, and then like the instant I do, Paula is like, hey, can you come in around? I need you to take this call. I'm like, I just got her over here, like I need her here. And she's like, but there's a customer who has a complaint. I'm like, aren't you manager? The fuck, why don't you do it? Apparently she has to do it. Okay. So, I don't know, it was a stupid night. And yesterday was also stupid, but I mean, what else is new? I don't really expect it to get any better. I don't want to continue complaining about it, so... Let's see, does this say how long I have on this to hatch? Still needs more time, oh boy. Alright, I think at this point I'm just going to go ahead and speed up. Alright, here we go. Did I get insanely lucky on my first try? Let's see. No, I did not. So, I will mention that when I was going for a shiny when I played Crystal the last time on console, I got sick of trying and eventually settled for a Tyrogue, a non-shiny one, but yeah, we're not going to be doing that here. You can't actually tell by looking at this, but, I mean, I'll mention it anyway. Just for some reason the odd egg, instead of just having the increased shiny odds, it does this thing where like if it's not shiny then all the IVs are complete trash. I don't know if they're all 0 or if they're just really low, and if you do get a shiny then that means it's at least decent, because the way that shininess is determined in Gen 2 is based off of stats. I think it's like it has to be 10, which would be low in later games, but in Gen 2 it's out of 15. Well, 16 if you count 0. So it's like 10 in everything except for attack, and attack can be like one of 5 different numbers. It's kind of weird. But anyway, I've decided I'm still going to be doing that, but let's fight this guy so I don't have to worry about bumping into him. And I'm also going to catch like another Pokemon on this route so I can like have something to talk over during the sped up section. Probably catch a couple things, actually. I don't know, we'll figure it out. I should probably get the bike message out of the way also, but that's not that big of a deal. So yeah, at this point, I think it kind of goes without saying that basically all this is going to be off-screened. I don't want to spoil yet which 3 Pokemon I'm aiming for. I have my reasons for it, and once I get the one that I want, or if I happen to get a shiny for one that I don't want, I'll kind of go into my reasoning a bit. But, for right now, I'll leave that a mystery, and, let's see what we can find in the grass here. I know there's a couple more Pokemon I can catch. Abra was not the one I was expecting, but I'll take it. If I can get it. Let's see. I have one Great Ball. Let's go for it. I don't know what Abra's catch rate is. Nope. And you know what? I'm not losing that Great Ball, so let's pretend that didn't happen, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, well, here's something different. This one shouldn't be hard to catch, I'm guessing. I will mention that Snubbull is not originally here in Gold and Silver. It's found on a later route left of Ecruteak, and it's one of the like 1% unless it's swarming Pokemon. For Crystal, they made it more common. And this was also a potential team member at one point before I changed my mind on that. And when I say I changed my mind, I am not saying, like, that this was something planned out a long time ago. I basically am saying, like, until today, I thought I might be using one of these, and then I looked over its moveset, and I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Like, it can get some decent TMs, but... yeah. But yeah, so we'll talk about Snubbull a bit, and I'm going to be doing the egg cloning trick, so let's really hope I don't botch this up. Snubbull is kind of a weird one to talk about, honestly. When I was talking very many normal types that are part of an evolutionary family in the early generations, and this one immediately contradicts that, along with Jigglypuff and Clefairy, which I also mentioned in the Teddiursa one, and the Togepi family. But what all the things I just mentioned actually have in common is they all became fairy types as of Gen 6, in Jigglypuff's case just part fairy, so it's still technically correct, but it depends on what generation you're talking about. Both of the sources that I use for inspiration for these bios, the NeoGaf thread and Bogleech, both mentioned that apparently when this Pokemon was first revealed, whether visually or its name, the fan base basically had a conniption over it and said that it was the worst thing ever, which is pretty hilarious because that's pretty much what happens with every Pokemon ever released now in newer generations, but on a grander scale, because whenever a new generation comes out, all the people come out of the woodwork declaring it to be the worst thing ever made and how the old games were so much better and these are not Pokemon. Apparently that was happening back with Gen 2 also. I was not part of that. That was probably slightly before my time, because I definitely remember Snubbull being revealed through the Pikachu's Vacation short before the first movie, and when I went to see that movie, it didn't catch me by surprise because I actually did see like an article talking about it in some magazine beforehand. So I knew that Snubbull, Meryl, and Donphan did exist and were going to be in the movie, but I never really saw any of the fan base reaction to it. And as a kid, I never had a problem with this one. It existed, and it never really bothered me in any way, but it didn't really stand out to me much either. Looking at it now, I have to say I actually dislike it quite a bit compared to how I used to feel, because it mostly was just forgettable to me. Like, it was there, but I didn't give a crap. Now, I feel the same way, but I also kinda hate it. Like, I'm not really sure what they were going for with this one. Bulbapedia claims that it might be based off of a Celtic mythological thing called the Kusith, but it isn't really, other than the fact that they're both dogs and they're both fairies of some variety. The description of that thing doesn't really match Snubbull at all. So I think with this one, pretty much they were just playing on the idea that bulldogs and pugs are kinda ugly, but ugly in like a cute way. I personally never found them to be all that cute. I think they're mostly just ugly. And the Pokedex entries for Snubbull always mention that, like, women find it irresistible, which I find odd, because then you're just kind of lumping the entire gender into believing this one thing, but whatever. But yeah, it's pretty much just, let's take an ugly animal that is known for being cute in some regards, and make it an ugly Pokemon wearing, like, a frilly pink outfit that's supposed to be, like, dressed up to be beautiful, but it isn't. Like, it kind of looks like it's wearing a fairy suit. I think that's probably what they were going for, because it's always been called the fairy Pokemon, even before fairy was a type. And so, it made sense to make it into a fairy type, and it's one of the very few physically oriented fairy types now, so it's at least got that going for it. But, prior to Gen 6, it's just a fairly unremarkable normal type with a crap moveset that in Gold and Silver is extremely rare, and in Crystal is slightly less so. Name is pretty straightforward also, it's just Bull as in Bulldog, and Snub because that's just what, like, haughty people do. Japanese name is just Bull, so it's even worse. And the English name was originally spelled Snubble. There was actually an episode of the anime that spelled it that way in the title card by mistake, and I'm not really sure how they pulled that off, but they did a good job. Okay, so I've got 5 eggs, and the daycare man still has one, so I can basically start hatching these now. Before I do, you know what, I was gonna say I'll go out and catch an Abra. Fuck it, I'll just do the commentary for the Abra over it. I'll catch an Abra later, whatever. So, let's do some eggs. It'll be fun, yeah! Abra, along with Drowsy, is one of the first psychic types that you're likely to encounter in some of the early games. And they're sort of counterparts in a sense. They're not version exclusives, and they're not necessarily related in any way, but they're kind of opposites in the sense that Abra is actually available earlier on than Drowsy is, at least in Gen 1, but you might end up passing it up just because it's somewhat rare, and when you do find one, it's going to teleport away immediately, so it's kind of hard to catch. And it also is almost sort of a light version of Magikarp in the sense that it's fairly useless, and you have to get it up to its evolution before it can actually start doing any good. In this case, just because Teleport is the only move that it learns, you can teach it stuff through breeding or through TMs, but unless you do that, you have to bait and switch it up to level 16 before it evolves. But when you do that, it's actually fairly worth it, because Abra's evolutions are quite strong, and are actually stronger than Drowsy's evolutions, so it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're willing to put in the effort, then it's worth it in the end. This one has a sort of a tenuous basis behind it. It's not really specifically based off of any animal as far as I can tell. Bulbapedia is claiming that it could be a goat or a fox, which are both apparently tied to magic in some sense. Maybe. I've also seen it referred to as a possum. There's actually 2 different animals called possums. There's the American ones, which have the silent O at the beginning, and then there's the Australian ones, which are a rare case of the Australian version of an animal actually being the less scary one. And this looks sort of like the Australian possum, which sort of makes sense because possums are also nocturnal and this thing is constantly sleeping, so it sort of works in that regard. As for why it's covered in, like, body armor, that's anyone's guess, really. I can't really think of any reason why it is, but the reason that it's sleeping is probably more to do with its Japanese name than anything else, because it was actually named after I guess you would call a real-life psychic or mystic named Edgar Casey, and Abra's name is just Casey. He was apparently known for going into self-induced trances and then giving people, like, spiritual advice while in said trances. I did an extremely small amount of research on him, and he seemed like a decent enough guy. A lot of psychics, or so-called psychics, are kind of known for like, giving bad advice to people or sort of preying off of the gullible. He at least seemed pretty, like, straightforward about the fact, like, he didn't give his advice as, like, the final word and basically told people to, like, do what they feel is right. So, he at least was kind of good in that respect. English name, I always thought was kind of a weird one just because it doesn't really stand well on its own. I actually first saw Abra on a trading card that I found in a Walmart parking lot, and it was one of the first Pokemon I ever saw, other than, like, the ones that were everywhere in the media. And I thought it was just Abra. I didn't realize that Pokemon names really had any kind of basis off of real words at that point. But no, it's just the first half of Abracadabra. And the beta name for it was Hocus. I'll give you 3 guesses what Kadabra's beta name was. It follows the same format there. But that's about it for this one. It's certainly one of the more iconic psychic types, but it's not really one that you're ever going to want to use. You want to definitely put through the effort to evolve it. Okay, let's see what we got. Totally wasn't just watching Vinesauce or playing Shuffle. Neither of those things. No, not at all. Alright, non-shiny Smoochum. I do like me some Jinx, but we're not going to be using non-shiny Smoochum there. And now let's, okay. Why are these other ones, like, on a delay now? The, distance between these should be the distance it takes to walk from the guy to the PC, I would think. I'm not sure why it's not. That's kind of weird. I'm trying to think, because I think, like, eggs go off of cycles instead of exact number of steps, if I remember right. But I don't know exactly how that works. So it's, like, maybe because one of them hatched, it, like, messed with the delay on the other ones? I don't know. Alright, there's a Cleffa. A decidedly non-shiny one. At least we're getting different Pokemon. I was worried for a bit that, like, doing the cloning trick, it was gonna, like, set the RNG the same every time or something, because I'm not sure how the RNG works in this. It's probably based off the internal clock, so if that's the case, then, I don't think there would be any risk of that being the problem. But I don't understand how RNG even works in the later games. I know people can manipulate it by, like, sneezing on the game the correct number of times while playing it soft music lovingly with a clarinet. But, and, like, by doing that the proper way, you can, force your Pokemon to be shiny and have perfect stats. That stuff is weird. Here is a non-shiny Igglybuff. They're getting all the hard hitters today. I reiterate, I'm glad that they're at least different, because I'm going to be saving after this, so anything that I'm gaining through these eggs is actually going to be a new Pokemon for the, like, collection. I don't know when I'm going to frickin' commentate over these, because I don't really have the time to do it. No, I mean... Yeah, I mean, I guess I can probably do it over the next set. I was gonna just, like, after this set, I figured I would just cut until I finally get what I want, and then just give a recap of what I had, like, what things I found and how long it took. But, I am getting new stuff, so yeah, I might as well throw these in. I've got nothing else to do. And we're getting into duplicates, okay. I should have one more, right? This one's probably going to get released, because I can catch a wild Jinx later on. Yeah, I've got one more. I like how these are, like, actually the Pokemon. Except that looked more like a Jigglypuff than an Igglybuff, but whatever. I wonder how they decided what Pokemon get their own, like, menu sprites in this game. I know some of them are just based off of the dolls that you can have in the bedroom, but, by that logic, I wonder how they decided what ones get dolls. I guess just the more popular ones, but then you have, like, Grimer. I'm trying to remember what does get a doll, because it's like, you have, for the menu sprites in Gen 1, you have, like, the monster, the bird, the plant, the fish, just stuff like that. This one, they kind of branched out a bit. You have, like, a Pikachu, a Jigglypuff, there's, like, a Ghastly, I think, maybe a Tentacool. Yeah, duplicates! Okay. Well, not counting the Tyrogue, because that happened in an alternate universe that has not been saved over, we've now obtained 3 new Pokemon. I'm going to be releasing a couple of these. Let me actually make sure that these are identical. I think they are. I mean, at level 5, their stats are going to be so similar anyway, it's like you wouldn't even be able to tell, but... 8, 6, 13, 11, 11. Yeah. And then we have... Cleffa, there's only one. 8, 6, 9, 7, 6. Yeah. So I'm just going to release one of each, and I'll see you in a bit, I guess. Before I talk about Smoochum proper, I should talk about baby Pokemon as a whole here. If you've been following my channel for longer than about a year or so, you are probably aware that I've done a Pokemon Platinum LP, where the goal of that game was to get through with a team of nothing but baby Pokemon. And despite that, and having worked with them quite a bit, I will admit that most baby Pokemon are complete trash and have no reason to exist. The popular opinion is that they are basically Pokedex filler. They are made purely for marketing reasons, and they're, like, if they were never made, nobody would care. And for the most part, I would agree with that. But there's basically 2 different categories. The first category is we take a Pokemon that's already, like, small, cute, marketable, etc., and just basically pull a, like, pup named Scooby-Doo on it. Like, let's make it smaller and cuter, and everybody will be like, oh, look at how precious that is. I need to buy all of its merchandise, and it'll be, like, it's the most adorable thing ever. Those are completely useless. There's a few that they attempt to give kind of a point by giving the pre-evolutions some moves that the evolution can't learn, but that's extremely artificial because they could just give those moves to the evolution anyway, and in most cases they're not anything worthwhile. But then there's the second group, which is the group that would make a lot more sense and have a reason to exist, but they are usually implemented extremely poorly and end up being useless anyway. And this is the group where they take a Pokemon that's larger or kind of powerful already, usually a single stage or sometimes available late on in the game, and then they give it a baby form in order to make it more approachable. Like, let's have this thing available early on in the game, you can train it up, it evolves, you get to that point more naturally, it makes more sense having this come out of an egg, that kind of stuff. But again, they kind of botched this up because in Gen 2, none of the baby Pokemon are available in the wild. You get every single one of them by just catching the regular evolved form and then breeding it. And the only reason you would ever want to have the baby form is just to fill the Pokedex. There's really no reason otherwise. Crystal, again, kind of is the exception here because it gives you the odd egg, so you can use some of these things early on. But because the odd egg is so random, and the Japanese version tied it into an event anyway, it still was kind of clumsy and not done all that well. So, talking about Smoochum specifically, this definitely falls into the second category of let's take a stronger later game Pokemon and make it smaller and cuter or whatever. But it's kind of an odd choice. Jinx is sometimes considered part of a trio with Electabuzz and Magmar. I would argue that it's more of a counterpart to Mr. Mime in some senses, but we can talk more about that when we talk about Jinx. That's going to be kind of my discussion for most of this. It's Jinx, but less so. I like Jinx, even though it's admittedly, like, most likely a racist design. Again, we'll talk more about that later. I really like the type combination. Ice and Psychic those are 2 of my favorite types. I like them together. I wish that Smoochum was available earlier in games, or available at all in games, and not just a baby Pokemon that you have to breed for, or post-game only. But it's not. You can never get this thing other than through the odd egg, and it by itself doesn't really need to exist, because usually if you can get it, you can also get Jinx, like at the same time. In terms of moveset, it does have access to Sweet Kiss and Sing. Sing not being necessary because Jinx already gets Lovely Kiss, which is more accurate. And also, surprisingly, Confusion and Psychic are actually exclusive to Smoochum, and Jinx does not learn them in Gen 2. I assume this was changed in other generations, but that's at least the case for this one. So, in this particular case, if you wanted to use a Jinx in your playthrough and you don't get a Smoocher from the odd egg, you're actually better off catching one, breeding it, having the Smoochum level up and get those moves, and then evolve it, which is annoying because then you have to go through all that extra effort. So I still don't really understand why they did that, but sure, whatever. And again, in terms of design, there's really not much about this one. It's a Jinx, but it's smaller. It's what it would look like as a kid. It's pretty straightforward. The name is just like, there is a thing over there, let's smooch him. Like, because it kisses stuff. That's just kind of what it's known for. It goes around and learns what things are by kissing them for whatever reason. And the Japanese name is Moochel. Apparently a combination of Muchu, meaning daze or trance, and a Chu being the sound of a kiss. Also the sound that mice make, if Pikachu is anything to go off of, but whatever. And, yeah, that's about it for this one. The baby Pokemon overall is going to, like, my review on them overall is going to apply to all of the following ones, and the individual reviews on these are probably going to be really short, because there's not much to say about most of them. Cleffa falls under the first category of baby Pokemon, the ones that are just smaller, cuter versions of things that didn't need them, and is pretty much entirely useless, though I usually kind of give this one a pass just because I think that out of all the baby Pokemon, this is the one that does the best job at actually being fairly adorable and cuter than its evolution. I would argue that most of the other ones aren't, but I do have a soft spot for Cleffa for whatever reason. But other than just the fact that it is cute, I really can't give this thing a pass in any other respect. It is pretty much the embodiment of the idea of, let's take a Pokemon that exists and make it more minimalist. It really has no identity to itself. It's just a smaller Clefairy. The name is Clefairy but shortened, and that's the case in both languages. Clef is like, it's musically related, like treble clef, bass clef. It's apparently French for some musical term, I don't remember. And the Japanese name for this one's pretty good. It's just P. In this case, spelled either P-Y or P-I-I, depending on how you, like, translate it. But it's just basically a shortened version of the evolution, which is, guess what? PP. We're all very mature here. But yeah, it's basically just Pixie, but shortened. And in terms of if this thing has any reason to exist moveset-wise, it learns Sweet Kiss, which Clefairy doesn't. But that's the last move it learns at level 13. So, since this one evolves through happiness, you better hope you get this thing happy pretty quick, or otherwise it's going to be missing out on moves that its evolution could get. Because anything past 13 is basically wasted time. And reminder again, you can only ever get Cleffa if you breed a Clefairy. At least in Gen 2. In Gen 4, I think it's available alongside Clefairy in Mount Coronet, so it's like, even in that case, you would have no reason to not just go straight for the evolution anyway. and in later games that usually either doesn't show up at all or shows up at the same time, so it's Pokedex filler. I can't really say anything else about it. And if you thought that Cleffa was useless, Igglybuff I think is even more so, because at least Cleffa had the excuse that it was cute. This one I always felt was significantly uglier than Jigglypuff. The red eyes make it really creepy. It has a really stupid name, and it's extremely useless. So, this is probably the most useless of the baby Pokemon from Gen 2, and possibly overall. Although I think Azurill and Chingling kind of give it a run for its money. Chingling isn't horrible, but Chimecho didn't need a pre-evolution. It already kind of sucked. So, but whatever, that's getting into a whole other territory here. Much like Cleffa, it is just Jigglypuff, but less so, almost in every single sense. Its design, it's just a more simplified Jigglypuff. Its name, they followed the Jigglypuff Wigglytuff formatting, but dropped a letter off the beginning because they wanted to make it shorter. And they're like, crap, what letter do we use for the second part? And then they just used a B, even though buff means like muscular and tough, and this thing isn't at all. So the name is the name is unfitting and bad. The Japanese name is Pupurin, which is surprisingly actually longer than Jigglypuff's Japanese name, which is just Purin. Usually they shortened these, this one they made longer. Bulbapedia has a strange list of things that this could be based off of, and I don't really agree with like any of them. But again, I don't know Japanese, so I could be talking out of my ass here. Poochie means petite. I can get behind that one. Purin, which is just Jigglypuff's Japanese name, is pudding, so I can accept petite pudding. Sure, let's go with that. But then it also says Fusen, which means balloon, and Fukureru, which means expand or inflate. I don't see where you're getting Fusen or Fukureru from Pupurin. Like, there's a few similar noises, and like they all have U's in them, and like R, but no, not really. Okay, whatever. Moveset wise, it's pretty much Cleffa again. It gets Sweet Kiss at 14 and then doesn't learn any moves after that. This one also gets Charm, so those are two things that it can do that Jigglypuff can't. It can sharply lower the opponent's attack, and it can confuse things with a low accuracy. Oh boy. Oh! Let's get ready for disappointment! No, I don't know. There's still a chance. This took like 15 minutes. Yeah, another Igglybuff! Yeah! Okay. And now I get to wait for the other ones to hatch, because it's like there's no point in me going off screen again for the couple minutes it takes between these. So, let me just talk about my day. No, I mean, there's really been nothing. I got up at about 10:30. I started doing this shortly after. After cloning the second batch of eggs, I made some macaroni and cheese with chicken in it, and I ate it. I watched more Vine Sauce. I haven't played more Shuffle, surprisingly. I never actually played it much in the first place. I, like, found a team that might work okay for a stage, and then didn't actually do the stage. That was the extent of what I did. Well, here's something new, at least. That looks like the regular Pichu. Shiny Pichu is not that different looking from the regular one, so let me double check. But I believe that is the regular one. Yeah, there would be a, like a sparkle icon if it was a shiny. Alright, well, at least it's something. I needed one of those eventually. So I have not gotten an Elekid or Magby yet. And I haven't gotten a Tyrogue in this particular timeline yet. I was told, during my, like, macaroni eating session, that, like, when I was vaguely posting about what I was doing on the Discord, I was told that apparently the odds for getting, like, all the Pokemon and getting them as shiny isn't exactly as even as what I said it was. I'm going to look into that a little bit after this, unless I happen to get lucky and get what I want here. Okay, that's our third Smoochum. 'Tis a shame that I don't want to use a regular Jinx. Otherwise, I would have my, I'd be set by now. I'd have 3 to choose from, 3 identical ones. So how about them Nicks? Now, what can I say about Shuffle? I haven't talked about Shuffle in a long time. If you, have not followed anything of that game and only listened to my ramblings of it, you may not be aware that the game is actually ending. I think sometime in June, Marshadow is being released, and that is the last Pokemon that needs to be released, basically. Between now and then, there's still like another 20 or so. I don't know if this is shiny. Elekid's another one that's really hard to tell. I want to say it's not, but let me look. Oh shit, it is. Okay. We've actually met our new team member then. I was... okay. So, got lucky there. First shiny was... fuck Shuffle, I'm not talking about that. So, let me... while I hatch this last egg, just in case this happens to be another shiny... and then I have, like, a choice between 2. I think we're going with Electabuzz, though. Basically, I started working on this team long before this playthrough, like, even before I started Yellow, I think. And I realized that I wanted to use something from the Odd Egg, because I figured it would just be kind of interesting. I'd like to use shinies when possible, and there's a few things from the egg that are kind of neat. And of the 7 things, I decided that there were really only 3 that I wanted to go with. Let's see what we get here. Okay, it's a regular Tyrogue. Okay, at least I got another one of these. So, the other 2 that I would have been okay with were Cleffa and Igglybuff. And here's why. I didn't want to use Pichu because I've already used a shiny Pichu in Crystal before. And I've already used Pikachu in the Yellow playthrough, which was not that long ago. So I figured it would be a little bit redundant. I didn't want to use Smoochum because of type overlap, because I have other stuff planned that is gonna, like, not flow well with that. Otherwise, I probably would have been okay with it, but I did use Jinx back in Fire Red Omega. Like, that was a long time ago, so I wouldn't mind using it again, but I also used a Jinx in Gen 2 once, so I figured it would just be a little bit unnecessary. Okay, let's put Pichu in here. Let me release the Igglybuff. Don't really need one of these. Release the Smoochum. Tyrogue, I was kind of on the fence about. I wouldn't mind using it, but I did use Hitmonlee in the last playthrough, so I wouldn't want to use it in this one. That leaves Hitmonchan and Hitmontop, and I could have gone with either one of them. If I had gotten a shiny Tyrogue, I might have been okay with it, but I wasn't really feeling it. And then Magby, I didn't want to do because I've used a Magmar in Soul Silver, which is, like, same region. I figured it would be too redundant, and I used Magby in the Platinum playthrough. Now, I also used Cleffa in the Platinum playthrough, so that would have been redundant as well, but I didn't mind that one as much, because I've never used a Clefable at all. I've only used the Cleffa, so I figured it would be different enough. So anyway, we've got this thing. And, give me a minute to look up a nickname for it, because, when I was told about the... what do you call it? The odd egg, like, the odds of it hatching into what you want, I was also told that all these were female, and I wasn't aware of that. So I was gonna name this thing Edwin, after the actual name of astronaut Buzz Aldrin, because it's Electabuzz. And because I already named the Onyx David, I figured I might as well just go with like regular names across the board. So I need a female name for this one. I was going to go with Ariana for the Igglybuff or Cleffa for the record. But yeah, just give me a minute here. Okay, I've come up with one that I want, and the name rater is here in this city, so we can go ahead and do that. So I've still got more Pokemon bios to fit in somewhere now. I don't know how that's I don't think I have one. I didn't realize that was a side quest. But yeah, so let's see, I've got to do Tyrogue and Elekid now at some point. I don't really want to do them now, honestly. I'll fit them in somewhere, I don't know. Probably when I fight the people in the basement, because I'll have to do that at some point. So, let's see what we got around town, because I don't remember the layout of this place that well. I kind of do. I mean, I know where, like, some of the like points of interest are, but not necessarily all the, oh, what am I doing? I want this. Actually, do I? Because he calls if my box is full anyway. I don't think I need to ever have that. Because if I get it, I don't think I can ever delete it. That seems like that would be detrimental. Let's see, underground. Let's find the name rater. I think he's somewhere around here. This is the game corner. I'll go in there at some point. I'll need the coin case, though. Name rater, where are you? Actually, I think I remember he's up here. Yep, okay. So, couldn't really think of anything very, like, roundabout for this one. Like, calling the Onyx David took several leaps in logic. This one, I'm going to be going with Julie, and the reason for that is mainly a Kid Rad reference. Like, I was trying to think of something based off of, like, amp or watt or, like, something electric related. I didn't want to go with, like, Elisa, because that was a gym leader, or, like, Electra or anything super generic like that. And the thing is, like, there's not much of any kind of real basis behind Electabuzz that I'm aware of. I think it's based off of some kind of, like, Oni or something, but I'll obviously be looking that up when I get to the bio for it. So I figured, hey, a Jewel is a unit of energy, Julie, and then that was just the name of a character from Kid Rad that was named for that same exact reason, so whatever. Yeah, I don't think I really have much of a reason to be wandering about town right now. I don't even know why I'm doing it. Honestly, I said from the beginning this video was going to be a travesty, and it was mostly because I figured the egg hatching was going to take even longer than it did. But also just because I don't know what the hell I'm doing right now. I don't want to do the gym, obviously. I think I've basically checked out everything else that I would want to. So we'll just head into the basement, I guess. And I will, yeah, I don't know. There's, TMs I can buy in the department store, though, and that does sound like something that I would want to do. Do I have any money? Not really. Is this going to be the point where I have to start, like, duping items and selling them? Because I don't want to do that. Or I could, like, buy the items in gold and trade them over, but I don't want to do that either. Because, obviously I'm going to need to do some bait and switch on Julie to get the levels up, but, let's see, does it have any moves? I mean, yeah, I was thinking, like, electric moves. When does it actually learn electric moves? Let me look that up right now. This is the best video I've ever released because I'm going into it super prepared. I am totally not just looking shit up while recording or anything like that. I am a good person at doing things that exist. Alright, so when does Elekid learn a move? Because if it's not for a while, then I feel like getting the Thunder Punch TM would be Oh, no, never mind. It learns it at level 9. Okay, so no, we don't need to bother with that one. It can learn Ice Punch and Fire Punch, though, which is decent coverage, so can I afford any of those? I don't actually know where they are being sold. They are decidedly not being sold here. Also, I might have some stuff I can sell. I can check that. How about you? What do you got? Don't give a shit about you. I'm not going to be spending that much money just to get some extra EVs. Here we go. I can just barely afford one. Alright, so... Ugh. Let me think. I've already got Quilava for fire, so I guess I'll go with ice for right now. It's the more useful of the two. 69, that's hilarious. Yes, I totally meant to open the Pokegear, although that does remind me I need to get the radio card, so I'll go do that. So, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to allow Julie to just become the 3 Elemental Punches plus Dizzy Punch user, but that honestly doesn't sound like that bad of an idea. Oh, well, we've unlocked Mystery Gift, if only I had a way to use it. I don't... Oh, yeah, I forgot you could do this trade. Don't want to. You can get Machop, I think, in Mount Mortar. Also, I should probably, like, either stop talking to people entirely or make sure I talk to everybody, because I'm skipping over people, and I don't know why. I think on, like, Sunday, you can get the return TM here. But, it is not a Sunday, so I will not be able to do that. If you have to do so much shopping that you get tired and then, like, take a breather up on the rooftop, then I think you need to calm down a little bit. Remember how in the, okay, that was, hold on, that was way too goddamn appropriate for what I was about to say. Because I was about to say, do you remember how in, like, the yellow playthrough I was talking about how I am, like, incapable of spending any money, and I'm, like, the most frugal person ever? And I was about to say how, like, that's been changed now that I've started this stupid fucking Beanie Baby collection, because I have no reason to be spending money on these things, and yet I am. I spent, like... Let's see, I spent 50 on one, because it was a rare one. Then I got a set of, like, 10... for, I think, $40, and then I just got another set of, like, 7 for another 40, so I've... And that was, like, in the span of a week, so I really, really need to stop doing that. But I keep finding, like, people that have a bunch that I need. So anyways, this guy's... Yeah, just... This is just me, apparently. I don't know. Is it, like... I don't know, like I said, I definitely need to kind of calm down a bit on the spending. I don't do this very often, but of all the things I could be spending money on, useless toys from the 90s would not be the greatest of choices. Let me go into the radio tower real quick here. First we've got Mars Blackman. I don't know who Mars Blackman actually is. Bub's apparently dressed up as him in one of the Halloween specials. You have a purpose. It's like the greeters at Walmart. I don't really understand why they're there either. And it turns out I somehow do. What, I'm surprised he didn't be like, trade with everybody in the world in order to boost your chances, because they always do that. Because, you know, with a older game before Wi-Fi, that's totally a viable option. Yeah, there were 3 of those. I got them. Is this statement correct? Yes, no. Oh, goddammit, I wasn't. Let's start over from the beginning. I don't really get the point of this, because it's like, you can just brute force your way through it by guessing if you don't know the answers, but, like, there's no reason to have to start over, other than just the inconvenience, like if this was any kind of, like, real-life situation. Falconer, Violet Gym Leader, yes. And they're like, no, birds don't exist, they're flying types. Oh, god damn it. Yes? Damn it. Okay. Like, I haven't been to the game corner, I don't know that. I do know that the contents of the game corner changed between gold, silver, and crystal. I think you can get a Larvitar there now, which would be somewhat interesting if I didn't... First of all, if I had, like... If I didn't mind raising it up to level 55, which I very much mind, because that would take forever, and also because I already have a rock ground type on the team. Yeah, these are definitely different questions also, because I remember one of them being like, is Marie the, like, radio host? And it's not, it's Mary. It's, like, very slightly different. Yeah, let's randomly pitter around here for a bit, and then I suppose we'll head into the underground. The underground's a really weird area. Oh, I forgot about this. This is another new crystal thing. I assume you have to listen at a certain time of the day. I don't know if I've ever actually done this. Let me check what this is. Mary, Lucky Channel, okay. Diddle 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 diddle. Whether you're hot to trot or cool cat not, come visit my papa's spot. This week's lucky number is shark bait, yeah? 51170, okay. Wasn't that the same... Okay, yeah, I'm like, wasn't that the same number that was in the, like, lottery thing? And yeah, that's exactly what that is. Is that the same channel that plays the other thing I need? I don't know. I'll talk to her again. Okay, so specifically at nighttime. Oh, yeah, okay. This is... So do you only get 1 point every time? So if you do it consistently, then I can at least get nuggets and stuff. I guess that's kind of helpful. I'll probably not remember to do it, because I don't want to come back here constantly, and I don't want to have to check the game every day at 6 o'clock, because I have it plugged into the GameCube, and I'm not usually going to be taking it out. But, it's there if you want it, I suppose. But yeah, before I actually get into the underground proper, since I'm going to be talking over it in post, I'll go ahead and just say that I always got really weird vibes from it, and I can't entirely explain why. There's certain things in games that just feel off to me, and it's usually if I feel like they connect in ways that they shouldn't. A lot of side areas in DK64 give me that feeling, just because it's like you go in a door and it doesn't lead to something that feels like it should be attached to that door. And the underground in this game feels the same way to me, because it's got like this whole second weird, like, Team Rocket hideout thing that like randomly connects into the department store, and it just... I'm not really sure why. I don't know. But either way, we're going to be going through some probably fairly generic battles here, so let's do those, and it will be an exciting time. Pichu is yet another one of the let's take a popular, cute Pokemon and make it smaller and hope that it retains the popularity of its evolution, but it doesn't really group. And thankfully it's the last one of that group from Gen 2. Pichu definitely being the most well-known of the group, just because Pikachu is the most well-known. I can kind of understand why they did it for the other two, because Clefairy was like a secondary mascot, or like the original mascot in some formats, and Jigglypuff had its popularity from like the anime. Pichu as itself never really did a whole lot. Like, I don't think it showed up in the anime very often. Its most well-known role is probably just for being in Super Smash Bros. Melee. And I think the only reason it got into that was because it was considered like the favorite Pokemon of one of the designers. I don't think it was Teddiursa, but I'm not currently looking it up because I don't really care. Again, it's, what else do you say? It's Pikachu, but it's less so in terms of design, and in name. The name is the same in English and Japanese because Pikachu is the same in both. They just dropped a syllable from it. Pikachu is just, Pika means sparkle, and Chew is the sound a mouse makes, so it's just kind of that again. Moveset-wise, it's Cleffa and Igglybuff again. It gets Sweet Kiss at 11. Like, all of these learn Sweet Kiss for some reason. It's not every single baby Pokemon, it's just most of them. It also gets Charm, which is another, let's teach this to the baby Pokemon standby. But yeah, it's like, if you're gonna use a Pichu, don't. And it's unfortunate because, like, in Gen 2, Pikachu is not available until Kanto. So if you want to use one, you have to either trade one in from a different game, or wait until the post-game, basically. And it's like, if you want to breed one, then you have to go through Pichu, which is bad, and evolves through happiness, and learns its final move at level 11, so you want to evolve it super quick. I know in later generations it gets a Nasty Plot, which is kind of useful. Basically, they've tried to give this thing some kind of relevance throughout the years, and kind of still failed. Most notably in Gen 4, Heart Gold and Soul Silver specifically, where they tied it into the Arceus movie for some reason. There's like these scenes in that movie where it's like you have the Johto starters and then also a Pichu with a funky ear, known as spiky-eared Pikachu. And they like go around and do adorable things, while at the same time there's like gods fighting. I'm not really sure why they decided to do that, but whatever. So it's like they tied this into the movie, and then they made like this special in-game event where if you get the Pikachu colored Pichu, which is a really long and stupid name for just a shiny Pichu, if you get that from like a GameStop event, I imagine it was probably some kind of movie event in Japan, but again, I don't really care. If you get that and then bring it to Ilex Forest, you can get the spiky-eared Pichu from the movie. And what does it do? Nothing. It's a Pichu that you can't evolve. It had no reason to exist. There's nothing special about it. I think it does get, I usually research these things beforehand. I'm going to actually look this up right now and see if there's any kind of unique move that it gets. Let's see. I don't even care. Like, this is how little I care about Pichu. Does it get any new moves? It has different Pokeathlon stats. Oh boy. Swagger and Pain Split, what the hell? Okay. So it does get unique moves, I guess, but sure. But yeah, it's useless. You can't transfer it up into any later generations. It's just, and you can't trade it to any other Gen 4 games. It's just stuck permanently in Heart Gold or Soul Silver. But aside from that, Pichu also is given forced usefulness by having access to Volt Tackle, which is a really weird idea for a move introduced in Gen 3. I think Emerald specifically, now that I think about it, where if you give a female Pikachu a light orb and then breed it, the offspring will have Volt Tackle, and I think this is the only case of an egg move working that way instead of being inherited from the father. And Volt Tackle's a decent enough move, but again, it's more something for Pikachu to use, and Pichu is just kind of like the means of getting it, and it's just, I've never cared for it. It's okay, but I like Pikachu better, and I don't even like Pikachu that much, so, like, yeah. So how many times can I say this baby Pokemon is its evolution but less so before it gets old? Because that's the case for Elekid also. Except in this case, I think it's like even more of an extreme example, because the other ones that I've read out so far at least had something kind of going for them in terms of moveset. Usually nothing that you want, because it was just like Sweet Kiss and Charm. In Gen 2 at least, I didn't check for any of the later versions, Elekid's moveset is exactly the same as Electabuzz. So, theoretically, because Electabuzz is rare and like you can only find it in Kanto, they could have made Elekid available somewhere earlier on in the game, like somewhere in Johto, and you could catch this thing, and it would basically just be the first stage of the family, and it would be no different from just the first stage of any Pokemon family, other than it was released after its evolution was. But they didn't do that. They made it available only through breeding, so it has no point. The one thing I can really say about it is it was seen kinda early-ish on in the anime. It showed up in the Pikachu, whatever the short was before the Pokemon 2000, I don't remember the name of that one. It was in that, and I think prior to that it was also in the Orange Islands episodes. Like, you could see its plug sticking out from behind a bush, and Tracy was like, "Oh!" and thought that it was cool, I guess. I don't know. That's pretty much its contribution to the world, I think. It was an early Gen 2 thing, showing, I guess, that baby Pokemon would be a thing, because I think this was actually before Pichu was ever shown off, so I guess it was the first baby Pokemon. But yeah, I mean, it's... Electabuzz already is kind of a vague design, like kind of maybe based off of some kind of Japanese like mythology stuff, but maybe not. Elekid is just that, but smaller, and it has a plug on its head because it's electric. And so it's like... It's very artificial looking, which I don't really mind. Like, I don't care when Pokemon look like stuff that wouldn't ever exist in real life. But the fact that it has the plug like that, and like has the holes in the middle of them, like that is... There's Pokemon that have unnatural design like Magnemite that are kind of meant to be that way because they're sort of like artificial or robotic. This one, I can't really justify it. It doesn't bother me, it's just weird. And the name, it's Electabuzz, or it's Electric and Kid. I think you could have guessed that on your own. Japanese name, same thing. Out of all the baby Pokemon in Gen 2, I believe Tyrogue probably has the most reason to exist, and most people would probably agree with me there. Well, maybe not counting Togepi, but Togepi is kind of its own whole thing. So, this one is the baby of Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, linking together two originally unrelated Pokemon, or at least evolutionarily, and also introducing the new evolution, Hitmontop. So it, kind of an interesting idea, and I like that they did that because, with the Japanese names of Hitmonlee and Hitmonchan, they weren't very obviously related, but they were still next to each other in the Pokedex, and you would get them from the same area in the game, and you had to choose between them, so they were obviously counterparts, but they weren't related in any way, and then this one tied them together in a nice little fashion. I've seen a lot of people recommend similar things be done for some other stuff like Miltank and Tauros, but so far Tyrogue's the only time they've ever done it. And the design on this one also kind of makes sense. It's not just the evolution, but made miniature. It kind of resembles them, sort of, but not really. It's basically just a humanoid thing that I could see evolving into another humanoid thing, and it doesn't necessarily need to resemble either of them that much, because Hitmonlee is just kind of like a lump with no mouth and elastic legs, and Hitmonchan is a dude in a dress. I know it's not even a dress. It's like a skirt, and it's technically not even really a skirt either. But whatever. But this one's just, it's kind of wearing like a junior high wrestling outfit, which makes sense for it thematically because it's in training. Like, fighting types are usually, like, the thing that distinguishes them from normal types is that they're more disciplined. Like, they usually follow a specific type of martial arts. There's exceptions like Mankey, but most of them kind of are like that. And so this one's just kind of using like a basic, like, learning how to fight style before it specializes in any particular one. And so that's where you get into its evolution style, which is also one of the more unique things I've seen. If it has a higher attack, then it evolves into Hitmonlee. If it has a higher defense, it evolves into Hitmonchan. And if its stats are equal, it evolves into Hitmontop. And getting them to be equal can be a little bit of a pain because of randomized IVs, and not, like, if you don't understand how EVs work, then it can be hard to manipulate unless you go out and buy protein or iron. And then in later gens, nature also kind of throws a wrench into that because you have to plan around that. But, I mean, as long as you save before you get it up to level 20, it's usually not too hard to kind of manipulate it to what you want. But you definitely want to evolve it as quick as you can because Tyrogue only learns Tackle. That was the case up until Gen 4 when it gained Fake Out, Foresight, and Helping Hand, and nothing else. So that's as far as you're going to get with this thing. You basically just, you get it, and then you pick which evolution you want and go for that, or you just level it up and get whatever you get and then stick with it. But either way, I think it's a neat idea. Name on this one is just, I always thought it was just Tyke and Rogue. Bulbapedia also says that Tyro apparently means beginner. If you say so, I wasn't aware of that, but okay. And the Japanese name is Balky, like B-A-L-K-I-E, which is just bulky, but pronounced weirdly. I'm gonna go ahead and say I'm probably done there, so I have one more trainer battle to get through that I could be talking over, but won't, because I don't want to. Just to comment over basically what's been going on in the meantime. Julie's been surprisingly holding her own. Part of the reason I didn't use like an Elekid in the Platinum Baby run was because of how similar it is to Magby, and also because I figured like Magby and Elekid are both kind of on like the upper tier of the babies. Like, all the babies are pretty bad because they're low stats, obviously, but they're kind of like the better ones of the group, and I didn't really want to go for those. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the reason some of the babies existed, as you know what, I'm probably going to talk about that in the bio once I record that later, so I'm not even going to repeat myself here, but yeah. So, that's all the trainers on this route, I think. I'm going to double check. I would like to point out a couple of these. This guy is named Sammy, and I made a joke in my Soul Silver text LP that it was a reference to Professor Oak, like, and his, like, past self from the 4th movie, because it's the forest. This guy is named Brandon, which is only noteworthy because there was a, on the website Pokemopolis, back when it was still, like, around, and I hesitate to use the word relevant, because I don't know if it ever really was, but when it existed, the site was originally run by somebody named Brandon, and it had no kind of, like, weird, dirty overtones to it until the other people, Tim and Lex, took over later. And there was this running gag about how Brandon just always wanted to have this family-friendly, like, lovely Pokemon site, and how things just didn't go his way, and then he eventually just kind of, like, got kicked off the site, pretty much. And there was a screenshot of when you beat that trainer, and it just says, like, Pokefan Brandon, why did it have to end this way? And it was kind of fitting. Yeah, I'm not going to battle you. Maybe someday. And then there was a kid named Ian there, which is only noteworthy because of Pokemaster Ian. But either way, there is one other Pokemon on this route that I'm hoping to find, but it's only a 5% encounter rate, so I think I'm probably going to have to do a time jump here. Unless it shows up now. No, it doesn't. Okay, time jump. There it is. That didn't actually take very long. So, we got our Igglybuff from the egg. Now here's Jigglypuff. And, I will point out that this one is actually available really early on in Gold and Silver. You can find it on that, whatever it is, 45, 46, the route that sticks upwards from Route 40, or from 29 at the beginning of the game. It was there in Gold and Silver. They got rid of it for Crystal for whatever reason. So this is the first time you can catch one. And, Jigglypuff had a chance of being on the team, but it would have been a shiny one. And, now it's not going to be, so we have one for the collection, and its ball looks like cotton candy. And we're going to be making cotton candy out of Alexand. So with that said, let's talk about Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff is definitely one of the most recognizable Pokemon, even for people who don't know anything about the series. It's never really been a mascot, but it's definitely sort of made its way into other media in some ways, because it's been a mainstay in the Super Smash Bros. Games, even though it hasn't really been relevant since Gen 1, and even then that's kind of debatable. And it had a recurring role in the show for the first season, but then it kind of fell out of that for a bit. But yeah, I've always just thought of it as sort of a lesser Clefairy, honestly. Not that I really consider Clefairy a step above it in any sense, but I think Clefairy is the one that was designed first. It was meant to be a series mascot, and then it just sort of wasn't. And Jigglypuff is just sort of like a more simplified version of it in some ways, but it does have its own identity. Its only real design basis is that it's just kind of a balloon, but it's also based off of just pudding. For some reason, its Japanese name is Purin, and that just is a type of pudding. The English name is pretty generic. It basically just describes what it looks like. Since it's not based off of anything in particular, they just came up with a name that fit its design, and it worked fairly well. But, yeah, its main thing that it does is it's kind of known for singing. That's usually just what it would do in the show. It would show up at inopportune moments, sing a song, everybody falls asleep, scribbles on their face, waste a minute of our lives. Did that quite a few times, though. They did change it up a couple times to make it, like keep it interesting. Like, sometimes it would actually be relevant to the plot, and they would, like, give it a twist or whatever. Most notably, the giant Jigglypuff from the Pokemopolis episode. But, yeah, in terms of in-game, it's just never really been all that noteworthy. It's usually kind of rare or in an obscure place where you wouldn't expect to find it. And, at least in the early generations, if you get it at a low level, its only move is Sing, so you do have to bait and switch a bit until it gets something else, which is usually just Pound, which is kind of a crap move. So I've never really had much of a desire to use one up until I thought I might try to get the shiny one for the playthrough here, but that didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to say about this one. Like, it's noteworthy for the fact that it is like a mascot, but it doesn't really do all that much. The one other thing I could say about it, I think, is that it started out as just pure normal, but in Gen 6, they changed it to normal fairy, whereas they made other stuff like Clefairy and Togepi pure fairy. And this is yet another bit of evidence for my theory that sound is, like, continuously considered as a potential type, but then they never do it. Because stuff like the only reason I can think of it being part normal is because it's a placeholder for it being a sound type. The same thing is true for the, like, Meloetta forms and a few other things like that. It's probably never going to happen, but I don't know, it seems logical to me. It's a Pokemon known for singing, and it's a sound-based ability, so make it a sound type. It's more sound-based than fairy-based, as far as I'm concerned, and it definitely doesn't really have any relationship to space, even though it evolves with the Moonstone. So, I don't know. Okay, so Game Corner here is apparently a lot more, like, well kept up than the one in Kanto, because there were no coins on the floor anywhere, which means if I want to play the games, I have to actually buy some, which is annoying, because I don't really have that much of an expendable income at the moment. I would be spending over half of my money just to get some coins, and I don't really care that much. Anyway, this is Route 35. I'm not doing this route here, or today. I don't know why I came up here. I just needed time to burn, basically. But, I did receive Kenya the Spearow, which I think is mostly notable for being something that speedrunners usually pick up. I'm supposed to go take this thing over to a guy near Dark Cave. I think you get the Dream Eater TM. You get some kind of TM. I forget what it is. Actually, it might only be Rest. If it's Rest, I don't care as much. I want to say Dream Eater isn't even a TM in this game, now that I think about it. So, I'll do that at some point, but I'm thinking I'm actually about done for today. This, I don't know how long the final product of this is going to be, but there was a crap ton of either off-screen footage or sped-up footage, and I'm looking at about 2 hours of recording right now. So I've got to do something with this shit. I've got a gym to complete, but that's not going to be for a while. I'm probably going to try to clear out the next route and stuff before I even go there. And just to recap, kind of to myself and for anybody else curious, Pokemon that I could have at this point but do not are obviously evolutions of things, which I'm not counting. Then I still need 3 things that are found at night in Ilex Forest, anything gotten through headbutting, Quillfish, which can swarm, and I think that's it. I guess technically Magby from the Odd Egg. What's my number like right now? 45, that's actually not bad at all for this point in the game. Oh, and I guess reminder to myself that I have to breed Cyndaquil and Totodile to get them registered in the Pokedex. But I will do that at some point, because I might, depending on how much patience I have, I may actually try to go for shinies of the other Pokemon. I feel like I'm probably not going to, because that sounds like a pain in the ass. But, I don't know. I would say if I have nothing better to do, then I'll do that, but I will always have something better to do, because if I'm resorting to doing that, then I need to tell myself that I need to be working on BA3, because I have, like, never freaking work on that. So, this was a video, I can say that much. Next one will also be a video, with probably significantly less time wasting. You thought I forgot to catch an Abra, didn't you? Well, you'd be right, because I did, but then I did it anyway, so whatever. Also, pointing this out, because I don't know when else I'd remember to, over here, this is Picnicker Gina. She gives you leaf stones. I forgot to register her number, but then I did, so everything's good now. Forever.